What if everything we thought we knew about infidelity was incomplete? What if, instead of seeing it as a failure of love, we saw it as a window into its complexity, a mirror reflecting not only our partner's desires, but also our own unmet longings? To challenge the conventional definition of infidelity, we must first confront the deeply ingrained narratives that shape how we perceive it. For most of us, infidelity is synonymous with betrayal, deception, and moral failure. It is often framed as a single act, crossing a line, breaking a vow, violating trust. This traditional definition leaves little room for nuance. It divides people into two categories, the faithful and the unfaithful, the innocent and the guilty. But human relationships, with all their contradictions and yearnings, rarely fit so neatly into such boxes. When we define infidelity only in terms of sexual transgression or secrecy, we miss the deeper story. Infidelity is not merely about what happens between two people in the dark, it is about what happens inside the self, a search for something lost or forgotten. It can be a yearning to reconnect with vitality, freedom, or desire. Sometimes, the affair is not about leaving one person for another, but about leaving the person we have become. To challenge the conventional view means to move beyond judgment and toward curiosity, asking not only what happened, but what was this person seeking? This shift in perspective does not erase the pain of betrayal. It does not deny the hurt, the rupture, or the loss of trust. But it acknowledges that behind every act of infidelity lies a complex emotional landscape, one filled with longing, fear, loneliness, and sometimes even love. By reducing infidelity to a simple moral failing, we deny ourselves the chance to understand what it reveals about human desire and the fragility of intimacy. In a culture that celebrates romantic love as all-consuming, eternal, and self-sufficient, infidelity exposes the cracks in our idealism. It forces us to face uncomfortable truths about the limits of one person to meet all our needs. It questions the assumption that once we find love, we should never want more, never look beyond, never feel curious again. This is why challenging the traditional definition of infidelity is not about normalizing it, but about humanizing it. When we broaden our understanding, we begin to see infidelity not only as an act of betrayal but also as an act of expression, a symptom of unmet needs, unspoken desires, or a longing for self-discovery. To rethink it in this way is to open a door to empathy, not just for the one who strayed, but for both partners caught in its aftermath. Because when we dare to ask deeper questions about infidelity, we are really asking deeper questions about love itself, what we expect from it, what we give to it, and how we live within its imperfect boundaries. To explore the paradox of love and desire is to enter one of the most profound tensions of human existence. Love seeks closeness, while desire thrives on distance. Love wants to know the other deeply, to build safety and predictability. Desire, on the other hand, needs mystery, space, and the unknown to stay alive. These two forces, though seemingly at odds, live side by side within every relationship. We are asked to love with stability and to desire with passion, to find comfort and excitement in the same place, to build a home and still feel the thrill of adventure. When people first fall in love, these two forces are beautifully intertwined. Novelty feeds desire, and the promise of connection feeds love. But as relationships deepen, love often matures into familiarity, and familiarity, while soothing, can also be the quiet enemy of eroticism. The more we know someone, the less room there seems to be for imagination. The very things that make us feel safe in love, security, predictability, and routine, are the same things that can dull the spark of desire. This is not a flaw in love, but rather a truth about the human condition. The things we need to feel safe are often not the same things that make us feel alive. This paradox becomes particularly visible in the context of infidelity. When someone strays, it is rarely because they are seeking another person, but rather another version of themselves. They are chasing the energy that comes from being seen anew, from feeling desired, from touching the possibility of who they could still become. It is not always a rejection of the partner, sometimes it is a longing for a lost sense of self. The affair, in this sense, becomes a quest for aliveness, a brief moment where desire is reignited in a life that has become too predictable. To understand this paradox is to see that love and desire do not cancel each other out. They are both essential to the human experience, yet they pull us in opposite directions. Love asks for commitment, while desire asks for freedom. Love wants to minimize the unknown, while desire is fueled by it. Maintaining both within one relationship is a delicate dance, to be close enough to feel safe, but distant enough to still see the other as separate, mysterious, and alive. Recognizing this paradox invites compassion, not only for those who have crossed boundaries, but for all who struggle to balance these two universal needs. Because within every act of love and every spark of desire lies the same longing, to feel connected, to feel alive, and to belong without losing ourselves. To acknowledge universal vulnerability is to recognize that infidelity is not an abstract concept reserved for others, but a human experience that can touch anyone who has ever loved. Love, by its very nature, exposes us. It demands openness, trust, and surrender, qualities that make connection possible but also make betrayal possible. We enter relationships with hope and good intentions, believing in promises of forever, yet none of us are immune to longing, temptation, or emotional distance. Infidelity, in its many forms, reminds us of the fragility of love and the complex needs that live beneath our vows. When we love, we want to feel secure, but we also want to feel chosen. We want to believe that love protects us from loneliness and that commitment shields us from uncertainty. Yet the truth is, no one is ever completely safe from the unpredictable nature of desire. Circumstances shift, emotions evolve, and people change in ways they cannot always control or predict. The person who strays is not always a villain, and the person who is betrayed is not always entirely unaware. Within every relationship lies a web of moments, missed connections, unmet needs, silent disappointments that make both partners human, not perfect. Acknowledging this vulnerability does not mean justifying betrayal, rather, it means understanding that no one is above it. Infidelity does not always stem from malice or lack of love. It can arise from loneliness within togetherness, from the ache of feeling unseen, or from the quiet fear of aging, invisibility, or lost passion. The vulnerability of being human ensures that we are all capable of both deep loyalty and quiet yearning. When we accept this, our view of infidelity becomes less about moral superiority and more about shared humanity. It allows us to hold compassion even in pain, to see beyond the act itself and into the emotional terrain that led there. The awareness that anyone can fall not because they are weak, but because they are human, creates a space for empathy, understanding, and healing. It reminds us that love is not a guarantee of permanence but a living, evolving process that requires constant attention and honesty. Every person who has ever loved has felt the tension between devotion and desire, between comfort and curiosity, between what is and what might be. To love is to be vulnerable to loss, to disappointment, and to the unpredictable stirrings of the heart. Infidelity, in this sense, does not simply divide people into right and wrong. It reflects the universal condition of being human, longing, flawed, and yearning to feel both safe and alive at once. To invite empathy and reflection in the conversation about infidelity is to shift the focus from blame to understanding. Society has long approached infidelity with a moral lens, a simple story of right and wrong, of victim and perpetrator. Yet human relationships are rarely so straightforward. When we reduce infidelity to an act of betrayal alone, we silence the deeper emotional truths that exist beneath it. Empathy does not mean approval, it means the willingness to look beyond the surface, to ask what the act reveals about longing, identity, and unmet needs. When someone betrays their partner, our instinct is often to condemn. But empathy asks a different question, not how could you, but what were you seeking? It asks us to consider what might drive a person, often one who still loves deeply, to risk everything they hold dear. Sometimes it is the longing to feel desired again, to reclaim a part of oneself that has been buried beneath years of routine or responsibility. Sometimes it is an attempt to awaken a part of the soul that has gone quiet, a desire not for another person but for another version of the self. By approaching these questions with empathy, we begin to see infidelity not simply as a transgression, but as a symptom of deeper emotional disconnection. Reflection, too, plays a vital role. For those who have been betrayed, reflection opens a space to move beyond the pain of the act and into understanding. It allows one to ask, what does this reveal about our relationship? About what we each need? About how we've been living? This does not mean taking blame for another's choice, but recognizing that infidelity often emerges from silence, from the places in a relationship where conversation has faded, where desire has gone unnamed, or where one's inner world has been neglected. Reflection invites both partners to confront truths that may have long been avoided. Empathy humanizes the one who strayed, reflection humanizes the one who was hurt. Together, they offer a path toward deeper understanding, not necessarily reconciliation, but clarity. They allow us to see that infidelity, painful as it is, can also be a mirror reflecting what love asks of us: honesty, presence, and vulnerability. In the absence of empathy, we remain stuck in cycles of judgment. In the presence of it, we can begin to grasp the emotional complexity of human desire. When we choose empathy over condemnation, we move from punishment to understanding, from silence to dialogue, and from brokenness to insight into the very nature of love itself. To set the stage for rethinking intimacy is to recognize that infidelity, while often viewed solely as a violation of trust, can also serve as a powerful lens through which we examine what intimacy truly means. For many, intimacy is equated with transparency, closeness, and loyalty, the assurance that we know and are known completely by another person. Yet genuine intimacy is far more intricate. It is not built merely on proximity or confession, but on the capacity to hold both connection and individuality, both familiarity and mystery. When infidelity occurs, it shatters the illusion of total knowing, and in that rupture, we are confronted with the deeper question of what it means to be close to someone who remains, inevitably, a mystery. Rethinking intimacy requires acknowledging that love alone does not guarantee emotional fulfillment. In many relationships, intimacy is mistaken for sameness, the belief that unity means merging into one being, sharing everything, leaving no room for secrecy or separation. But the truth is, intimacy flourishes not when we erase distance, but when we respect it. To love someone deeply is to know that there will always be parts of them that remain unreachable, private, or evolving. Infidelity often exposes the pain of this truth, the realization that our partner has inner worlds we do not fully inhabit. While this realization can feel devastating, it also reveals the fundamental paradox of human connection, that we seek both closeness and independence, both transparency and privacy. In this light, the aftermath of betrayal can become an unexpected invitation to rebuild intimacy on new terms, ones that allow for curiosity rather than possession, dialogue rather than assumption. Instead of seeking absolute certainty, we might seek understanding. Instead of equating loyalty with sameness, we might redefine it as a shared commitment to growth and honesty. When couples begin to explore what the affair signifies rather than only what it destroyed, they can uncover truths about how desire, attention, and emotional needs have shifted over time. Rethinking intimacy does not mean excusing betrayal, it means recognizing that infidelity reveals the limits of idealized love and the hunger for emotional depth. It challenges us to look inward, to ask how well we listen, how authentically we express our needs, and how bravely we confront disconnection when it arises. Intimacy, then, is not the absence of distance, but the courage to engage with it, to remain open to the ever-changing landscape of another person's inner world. Through this lens, infidelity becomes not only a story of pain but also a catalyst for transformation, urging us to redefine what it means to truly know, love, and stay connected to another human being.